you're not having a period on birth control. Like that's what gets so many women confused is they're like, I want to get on birth control to get my period or to have a better period. I'm like, but that's not actually what's happening. Hello, hello. Welcome back to another episode of She's in Sync. Today I have a returning guest slash former client of mine, Lisa. So I wanted to have Lisa back because she is really a testament to something that I've been seeing a lot with former clients reaching out to me, which is first of all so cool that A, they keep in touch with me and we build such a strong connection, and B, that they are continuing to reach out, you know, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year after graduating, working together, and still are continuing to see wins and progress. And so I wanted to bring Lisa back on because she is such an advocate for women's health after working together and everything that we uncovered. And she, I don't know if it's fair to say, but I feel like your whole life has changed since we began this journey almost a year ago. And so not only to highlight that investing in this type of root cause work will help you feel better, but it will help you feel better for the long term, not just short. I mean, we're all about short-term wins. Like that's great. And you had a lot of those, and there are lasting impacts from this versus like, okay, you feel better for a couple of weeks or a couple months and then things backslide or symptoms come back. And I also wanted to have her on to chat through just how things this has impacted her life, because a lot of times we get, stuck on, not stuck on, but we really hyper focus on the symptoms of like, I want to clear my skin, I want my periods to be better, I want to get my period back. And that's obviously a big piece of the work we do. And it's also, there's like ripple effects. And I did a whole podcast episode about this, I think before the new year, or like right after, because that was something that I was just inspired to talk about that. So Lisa is going to be sharing her story about not just our work together back then. And we have a whole other episode where we really dive into like the labs and, more clinical stuff, what we're doing, the protocols. So I'll link that in the show notes if you want to go back and take a listen to the first episode she was on. That was probably a year ago, actually, that you came on.
It was, I think, and very beginning of August.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're recording this beginning of July. So yeah, this is going to be more about like the here she is almost a year later. So
Yeah.
welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back.
Of course. Of course. So for people who maybe haven't listened to the previous podcast episode, let's just go through kind of a little bit about your story, like where you were at, what made you decide to work with me, what you were experiencing, what did your day-to-day life look like over a year ago when you first decided to, you know, chat and invest in working together.
Yeah. So before I met you, I was stressed out all the time, anxious, irritable. When I was on birth control. I'd been on birth control for over 20 years and would have really light periods, but they were pretty regular, but would have these intense mood swings, not every month, but most months. And around my period, I would be very sensitive, very emotional. You could say, oh, you have like this little hair that's sticking out. And I'd be like, meltdown. I was off the rails. I remember when we first talked, you were like, how stressed do you think you are? I was like, I think I'm a 5. I was probably like 105, if I'm being honest, looking back. I think my world compared to how I am now, I think my world was a lot smaller than what it is currently, but I didn't realize that. I thought that I was doing a lot of things. I was active. I thought I felt good, but I didn't feel good. I mean, I was just, like I said, irritable, short-tempered, and I just did not like being like that. But I thought it was normal. I thought that was who I was. I had no idea that I should be like that. And I had even gone to my doctor before we started working together, and I was telling her about my symptoms. And she said, well, we can try to switch you to a different type of birth control. I was on an oral birth control, and it was just monophase birth control. And so she said, let's switch you to a triphasal. So I tried that, and it did help improve my mood swings and my irritability. But I mean, it was still there. There was still something that wasn't right. And she said, well, if that doesn't work, we can put you basically on an antidepressant. And I thought that just doesn't seem like what I need. And I know that there's a right time and a right place for that. But I just felt like that wasn't what I needed. There was something else going on. And then, so one of the trainers at my gym, you guys had gone to school together, and I was listening to her podcast, and you were on there and talking about birth control. And just the conversation really opened my eyes that I think you could help me. And, then I slid into your DMs and never looked back.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing that you said that I think a lot of people can resonate with after the fact is you didn't realize how bad it was. And I hear that a
Yeah.
lot where it's like I set the bar very high for my clients in terms of like what I want them to feel like. And sometimes they don't even realize what's possible for them until we start digging in and going through these protocols and like uncovering all these things. And side note with that, one of the biggest concerns clients have when coming to me is they're like, well, what if like I feel like I've done all the things like, and you hadn't done a lot of lab testing. I don't think it was more of like just going to your doctor and then kind of giving
Yeah.
like cookie cutter, like let's switch birth controls or let's try an antidepressant. And a lot of women who come to me, they're like, I've had blood labs done, I've had my hormones tested, like they've done all these things. And so they're really scared because all those things come back normal, quote unquote.
Right.
And so they're like, well, what if my labs don't, what if you don't find anything? And I always like get excited when I get that question because I'm like, transparently, I've never had that happen. Usually it's the opposite. Usually we're uncovering way more than than what you think is possible. And so I say all that because, like you said, you thought your stress was a 6, and when we got your labs back, I was like, I don't know how this girl's stress is actually like or like a 5. I don't know how this girl's stress is like a 5. I would consider it, yeah, like a 105.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too, that I was thinking of when you were talking is I could not get my mind to quiet down at night. So I would take melatonin, like the super high dose melatonin. And then I would say 9 nights out of 10, I would get back up and take like another half of a melatonin before I could finally fall asleep. And one of the supplements that you prescribed was like a natural sleep aid. And I do take that still occasionally, but it was like I just like quit the melatonin cold turkey and started that
Mhm.
natural sleep aid. And I did like 2 capsules of that for a while, maybe a month, and then went down to one. And then now I can fall asleep without anything. I mean, like, unless there's something that's really big going on, and my mind is busy, it's still not even close to as busy as what it used to be. And I can get up and I can take, one of those natural sleep aids. And I've started using a meditation timer. So, or a meditation app. And now I can't think of what it's called, but there was like a couple of nights here this last week where my mind was really busy thinking about work stuff this week. And I thought, I'm not going to lay here and toss and turn. I'm just going to get up and take one of those sleep aids. And I listened to a short little sound bath on my meditation app, and I was out cold.
Love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And you thought that was normal, just taking melatonin. Like that was something I think I pointed out. I was like, are you taking that every night? And you were like, yeah. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, well, we don't want to do that. So if you're listening to this and you're taking melatonin every single night, like you're relying on that to fall asleep, A, you can become like immune to it, and B, so it's like less effective, and B, like you shouldn't have to do that. Like that's a sign something else is happening, which it could be a
Yeah.
variety of things. So yeah, I remember that you being like, oh, like I didn't realize that wasn't like normal or whatever, or like I was just me.
Yeah. And I think I remember you saying something too, because I would wake up a lot in the night, and I still wake up occasionally, maybe to go to the bathroom, but I would say most nights I'm sleeping through the night pretty solidly too. And if
Hmm.
I wake up in the night, I mean, I'm like up and back down in 2 minutes and completely passed right back out. Like there would be a lot of nights before where I would wake up and I'd think like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to go back to
Ugh,
sleep
that's the
because my
worst.
mind would just like start back up again.
Yeah, it's like right when your brain is like not in sleep mode, it's like da, 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 like all the things you have to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, and it impacted your relationships too and your work because I remember you said that you like it was you always thought people were mad at you or like
Mhm.
just like the littlest things like you said it was like your body was just not stress resilient, meaning like it couldn't handle stress because it was under so much physiological stress. And so a big thing that I'm really passionate about, and I know you are too, is like educating women that it's not just a them thing. It's like, and also that mood stuff isn't just your brain, it's like physiological. So if you have gut stuff going on, if you have mineral stuff going on, if you have like toxins in your body, like for you, like a big one was high copper. Like that was
Mhm.
something that we found, and we talk a lot about that in the first episode that she was on. So again, if you want more of the labs, like take a listen to that. But high copper is huge, and that's something that I see on. Actually, just did a lab review yesterday for a client, and she is having very similar symptoms, but she was just brushed off as like, oh, it's just perimenopause, like deal with it. But she's having chronic insomnia and like rage and stuff like that. And I was like, well, you have high copper. This is literally a toxin in your body. And for you, that like copper gets stored in your brain if it's in excess. And so birth control can also increase that. So if you've been on birth control for 20 plus years, like you had, it's like that can make it go higher. So just lots of things to think about, and no one's testing for these things. And so that's why
Yeah.
the testing I do is so unique and different, because it's really geared towards women's health, and what I've seen over the years be really effective, especially for people who are coming off birth control, have been off birth control, and are experiencing symptoms, but for anyone in general.
Well, and then I showed my doctor because I had gone, there was something that showed up on my very first labs that
Yeah.
we were a little bit concerned about. So I went back and asked my doctor to check that and asked her about that, about the high copper specifically, because she looked over my labs and she was like, I don't think that's a big deal. I mean, it could mean some things, but we can just watch it. You'd already gone over my labs with me. And I wanted to say, this is a big deal. Like, this is why I don't feel good. And you're just like, oh, it's fine. I thought I need a new doctor.
Yeah. And I bet, I bet that I don't think that's something they're trained in. So I bet that's why. But
Yeah.
she honestly didn't know why that happened, or like what was going on with that, or how it could impact you. So she just was like, instead of saying, I don't know. This is just my postulation, but I'm wondering if she didn't know. And so she just, instead of being like, oh, I'm going to look into that, like doctors, unfortunately, just the way our conventional medical system is, it's like they're like, you spend 5 minutes with them, right?
Mhm.
Like once a year, or unless you're like chronically going back, and then maybe it's like 5 minutes every, couple months, but they just don't have the time or capacity to do a lot of deep dive education on those things. And they're not taught about a lot of this stuff too. So,
Yeah. Well, and then the other thing, she would ask me, she would say, are you having regular bowel movements? And so I would say, well, yes, I'm going to the bathroom every day or most days. But then when I talked with you, initially I was having the pebbly stool. Well, I'm like, oh, I'm having pebbly stool every day, but like, that's not the question she asked me. And you're like, that's not normal.
yeah, yeah, like not good bowel movements.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was like, I'm having bowel movements, but like, are you having like a good bowel movement?
Yes. Yep. And
They
that's
don't
a
they don't
good,
talk about like they don't talk about, well, like what's good, what's considered normal, like what do we need to
correct.
be concerned about?
Correct. Just like with periods, like that grinds, that grinds my gears when they're like, how's your period? But you're on birth control. And I'm just like, yank my hair out. I'm like, you're not having a period on birth control. Like, that's what gets so many women confused, is they're like, I want to get on birth control to get my period, or to have a better period. I'm like, but that's not actually what's happening. So, quick
Yeah.
side note, because if you're listening to this and you're like, what the hell are you talking about? Birth control, if you're on a hormonal birth control, it shuts your ovulation down because it's pumping you full of artificial hormones. So you're not actually ovulating, which is what actually, you know, is a true period. So if you're on birth control to help with your periods, that's actually just suppressing what's actually causing that. And so it could be like, under eating, it could be high copper, it could be gut stuff, it could be minerals. Like there are so many other things. That's why when women come off and their period goes missing again, or it comes back with a vengeance, it's like, well, yeah, that's because you didn't get to the root cause of that happening. Same thing with acne or mood swings, stuff like that. Like birth control does, it does a lot of negative damage to our body, and it doesn't it masks the deeper root cause. So if you're put on birth control for a reason other than pregnancy prevention, just something to that's why it's really important to prep your body and work with someone who knows and understands that and runs the right functional lab tests, because I recommend prepping for 3 to 4 months prior to coming off, which is what you and I did, and why for the most part you had a really smooth transition off, and
Mhm.
you started seeing results pretty soon right away. So let's kind of
Yeah.
talk about like the highs and lows of the healing journey. So I'll let you kind of take that piece, and I'll add to it as we go. But if you want to start with like
Yeah.
some of the highs and the lows, and we'll just go from there.
Yeah. So I remember pretty quickly feeling a lot more energy. I mean, like within the first week or two, feeling a lot more energy, just feeling like my joints were looser. Then like I said, I was sleeping better with not needing the melatonin. And I just started being more social, more outgoing. I felt like I could talk to people, where before, I not only felt like people were mad at me, but I just thought, people, at the gym, like my gym has a really great community aspect to it. And I would not talk to people because I thought they don't want to talk to me, which made no sense because nobody ever said, don't come over here.
Yeah. A lot of storytelling
But
in your brain.
yeah, there was just a lot of storytelling in my brain. And then so I just started being social and would talk to people, and nobody ever said, go away, get out of here, scram. So I would just keep talking. And, that's just grown. Like now I'll just talk to anybody and talk to people in the store. So I would just say, like, my mental health is the thing I've seen the most that's improved, where I just feel mentally like a completely different person. When I was in my late, like all my life up until probably maybe really the last 10 years, I would say I was always kind of easygoing and like fun and joking and just playful and silly. And I lost that whole part of my personality. I mean, I just felt like I just kept getting like smaller and smaller. My world just kept getting smaller. And I was so anxious about things. And it's just kind of like when you're sick and you get sicker and sicker because you don't really realize it because it's a slow progression. It just becomes your new normal. So I just had no idea, um, you know,
Hmm.
that it wasn't normal. I just kind of forgot like how I used to be. And I remember looking back, this was probably maybe in December of 2025, looking back at videos, and I was just being silly and like pictures and things like that. And I thought, oh my gosh, I kind of like forgot about this part of my personality. And I was like, I need to embrace her again. So I've just been working to embrace that. And that, I would see friends that I hadn't seen for a long time, and they would say, you're not as, like as silly or like as fun or, as you used to be. And I just thought, I don't know, I'm trying to be like more mature. But that wasn't really the answer. I think I just was so stressed out and like so worried about everything, or worried about how I was being perceived, that I just wasn't being myself. And people just liked me being myself.
Hmm.
At least I think they did anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I would
But
agree
then
with
there
that.
was, yeah, there was a time, I would say, like low, there was a time, like October, November, December, and maybe that partially had to do with like the changing of the seasons. But I think there was that time, I was off birth control. We'd been working together for 6, 7 months at that point. And I think there was something going on in my body, like just the healing. And, I hadn't had a period yet since coming off birth control. I'd come off birth control at the end of July. And I think, like, for probably, I don't know, 20 years, I hadn't had a normal period. And, I just like, there's a lot of stuff like you talk about, like the brain connection and your body and your gut and your ovaries and your uterus, and like all this stuff is connecting and
All the
talking, and
body
like all
parts.
these, yeah, they're just like, firing back up. It was just like, I think all that stuff was firing and connecting, and they were talking and having conversations. And my body was like, whoa, I'm tired. But I did, I just was like, something is going, I didn't really put the dots together right away. I just was like, man, I'm like tired and I just don't feel like myself. And I remember going back and looking at some journal entries, and there was several months where I just kind of was like, I'm tired. I'm not into this right now. I'm just feeling kind of like meh and doldrums. And I think, maybe it's speculation, but I think that my body was just like all that stuff internally was refiring, and it was taking a lot of my energy. And I kind of pushed against that for a little while. And I was just like, no, I still need to keep going and being how energized I was before. But, at some point your body's like, hey, listen here, that's not what we're doing.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I would say that was probably the low period. But then I think after the first of the year, things have just kind of grown and gotten better. I, like my periods still were having like longer. There was some stress with work that was going on, some other relationship stress, and it was interesting because like I just switched jobs recently, and as soon as I switched jobs, like I had my first normal cycle since I had one normal cycle since we stopped birth control. But then this was like my second normal cycle, like since all of this has happened. And I was just like, stress really plays a big part of your cycle. And I think like the other high part for me is because you were talking about the fertility awareness method. And so, like, in your course, you offer a discounted package with Vicky. And, you know, if you, even if you don't want, even if you don't want to work with Taylor, you should, every woman should at least watch Vicky's videos because they should teach that in school. They don't teach that stuff in school that she talks about. So, like the first couple months going through and like watching your body like go through the cycles and your basal body temperature, like it's just like this fun science experiment playing out in your body every month and you're just a spectator for it.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
really nerdy, but
And the course that Lisa's referring to is the Fertility Awareness Method course. So Vicky Shahadi is a colleague of mine who I brought her course into my VIP coaching program. So I think when you were in it, I was just now getting ready to
yeah.
bring it in. You got a discount on it, but now it's
Yep.
included in the investment with VIP coaching. So you get lifetime access to it, and it teaches you like how to track your cycle, like because yeah, we're basically told when we're younger, it's like either you are on birth control or you risk getting pregnant if you have sex. And that's not true. There's a very
Yeah.
short
Yeah.
amount of time or a short window where you are actually at, like, could get pregnant. I don't want to say at risk because, like, some people want to have babies. So it's really
Right.
great if you want to prevent having children when you're off birth control. And it's also really great if you want to have children because it teaches you when you are going to be the most fertile, when you should try to conceive. And yeah, exactly like Lisa said, like it teaches us things that we should have been taught in school about our own bodies because that's the thing, like going back to what we talked about with how birth control works. That was my aha moment or like realization when I was listening to a podcast many years ago that really unearthed all this for me. It was learning I wasn't having a period on birth control, and that's the reason I was put on birth control. And I had no clue, even as a dietitian with a master's degree in nutrition, education, and all that stuff, that was happening and or not happening in my body. So it's a really great resource. So that's something that is definitely, a good thing to be aware of, and it gives you so much empowerment to know like when your period is coming, if you're ovulating, like because that was something I remember because that was the most distressing piece to you for a while after stopping birth control. It's like you wanted to get
Hmm.
your natural period back like ASAP. And that was really hard when it didn't come back right
Yeah.
away. And that oftentimes will happen. I always tell people, I'm like, the first 3 months, like, especially, like, that's when it's like, I'm not surprised. So don't stress about it because we had many candid conversations around like the stress of wanting your period to come back is preventing it from coming back. It's like when you want something so bad, like, it's almost like if you're like dating someone and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm obsessed with this person. You're like, I want this many kids and like, I envision us living in this house. So you come in like really hot and heavy. And then they're like, whoa, like this is too much. Like I'm backing away. It's kind of like the same thing when we want, yeah, like this girl's crazy. It's kind of like the same thing with their period. It's like when we push too hard, it's like it's not going to happen. So, but we talked about like let's start tracking like doing LH testing and just tracking your cycle, and so that gives you some information of like even because you can ovulate and not bleed, and you can bleed and not ovulate. So that was
Yeah.
something we
Yeah.
talked about too.
Yeah. The other thing that's, I think interesting too that I was thinking about today, because I'm in my getting ready like to approach ovulation in my cycle. So I'm in my follicular phase, and it's like you can tell like your skin, and you're like, now my cheeks are a little flushed today because it's warm out. But
You look tan too. Have you been getting
thanks,
outside?
I
You
have.
look very tan.
Thank you. But you're like, you can just kind of tell, like, you're like, oh, hello, follicular skin, because your face is all just like nice and glowy, and
Yeah.
you have more energy. So it's kind of like let's lean into this and like get a lot of stuff done. And then also when you enter your luteal phase, so you're not beating yourself up like, I don't have a lot of energy. You're like, okay, well, I'm in my luteal phase. Like, this is not the time to start new projects, dive into things. It's okay if you don't want to be social. So just kind of like understanding that part of your cycle too. So like pregnancy, non-pregnancy aside, like just that part of knowing. And Vicky talks too about like what's a normal period, and her course, I would say she's such a great teacher. I messaged her so many times. I was like, you are an amazing instructor because you make it so easy to digest. The videos are so short and they're dummy proof.
Yeah, and that's good because it's like I even went through the course and I'm
Yeah.
actually still going through it. I haven't finished it all, but transparently, but I am like, wow, like this is even, things that I am learning going through it. So yeah, so that's probably like a high of, of the journey is like learning how to work with your cycle and also normalizing that every day is not the same. And so we are, especially I think as women, I think everyone is hard on themselves, but especially I think as women, we're very hard
Yeah.
on ourselves. And, with our symptoms being perfect, with our bodies being perfect, with like, our health being perfect and just everything. And so just knowing like, okay, like I'm in my luteal phase right now. Like, it's okay if I don't have energy. And like, this is probably a week where I'm not going to want to go to the gym every single time I normally do. And that's okay. Like, let's lean into that versus like pushing yourself. And that's where a lot of it's kind of like intuitive eating, like where it's like
Mhm.
you work with yourself versus like dieting where you're constantly working against your body and like your biology.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Or, like Vicky talks about, like, hey, maybe like all you want to do during your luteal phase is do Pilates and yoga and walk. Or like, the other parts of your cycle, like let's go to HIIT classes, let's do CrossFit, let's run a marathon.
Hmm.
I don't know, whatever it
Hmm.
is that you like to do. But yeah, so just kind of leaning into all of that, just she talks about too, and maybe she hasn't talked about this with other people. It's like men are kind of on like a 24-hour uh cycle clock, and women are not like that. So it's like we kind of expect ourselves to be like men, and women are just not like men at all.
Hmm.
So
Yep. Yeah. So we kind of touched on this a little bit, but like give us some highlights of like how has this journey, like what would you say, how has it impacted your life beyond like knowing your cycle and your anxiety being less, your energy being higher, sleep being better? How would you say this has impacted relationships, your life? Like you said that you felt like you now recognize like life was so small and now it's like
mm.
not.
Yeah, I think this is something. So over the winter, I did a lot of work on this, like a lot of kind of inner work, self healing, self discovery. And that was kind of the part of I spoke about earlier about getting back to that silly, fun Lisa, and just kind of being more vocal about telling people thank you, appreciating them. If I need help, ask for help, like learning that it's okay to ask for help. I don't have to do everything on my own, and just embracing friendships, being more, like I said, being more social, talking to people that I don't know, saying things to people in stores, talking to people at the gym, like people that I would think like, oh, I shouldn't talk to them for, whatever story I had playing in my head, that now just like talk to people and don't really think anything about it. Like, oh, did they think I said something stupid? Or so, and I was talking about this to somebody at the gym this morning, talking about, and she was talking about, she's the same age as me, similar age. And she said, I think I'm having like similar symptoms, like what you're describing. And my doctor said, oh, it's just like perimenopause. And she's like, I don't think that's what it is. And, I've tried to send so many people to you, but nobody, I don't think like anybody that I've sent has gone, but I'm just like, I want to hold up a billboard, like go, and like a parade, and like, you should do this. It'll be good for you. But yeah, so like if you're on the fence, do it. It'll be good. But so I
Yeah.
would say just really just like my mental health. I mean, I said that before, but just I don't know. I like I said, I started a new job recently, and that transition has been really good. And I don't think that I would have been able to kind of do some of like the inner work that I've been doing the last several months if I hadn't have worked with you, because I just would not have had the mental capacity to absorb the information or like reflect or do the work, or just acknowledge past cycles or past things that I've been doing that were, kind of holding me back.
Yeah. Yeah, and kind of going back to the person you were talking about in the gym really quick, like it's just perimenopause. That also is something that like really annoys me. And I need to do a podcast episode on that because I've been hearing that so often lately when women are experiencing these symptoms, like whatever it is. I mean, anyone chalks it up to perimenopause if they're a certain age. And that is like, I don't know if stereotyping is the right word, but that's like inadvertently labeling someone based on their age. It's almost like ageism. It's not, but like it's almost like being like, because you're a certain age and you're having these symptoms, it's perimenopause.
Mhm.
Closed book, closed case. Like see ya. Like you can do HRT, go on birth control, or just deal with it. But it's like
Yeah.
all those things like have reasons. So like the lab review I was talking about yesterday, like she was told that, like I said, and it's like she has a parasite, she has high copper, her minerals are depleted, her detox pathways are really sluggish, so she can't detoxify estrogen. So it's there's so many things with it. So regardless of if it's perimenopause or not, it's like there's still things you can do even if it is perimenopause. It's like you shouldn't have to suffer and feel awful. Like there are internal imbalances going on.
Yeah. Well, and then talking about perimenopause, there was somebody that I worked with before, and she would have chronic migraines. And I can't remember like what exactly her and I talked about, but like I tried to give her your information, or I mean, I did give her your information because I was like, that is like something more, because I think you said something about histamine, maybe.
Yeah, depending
I
on what
can't
it is, you
remember, but
recycle certain minerals.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then other people talking about, oh, I have ADHD or ADD. And you were saying like there's things that you could look at for that, because maybe that's not like people are just like, self-diagnosing or whatever. And there could be something more going on why you
Yeah.
can't
Yeah. And
focus.
that's, it takes like you've tried sending so many people my way and we've had conversations about that because I'm like, you're doing a great job. Like one of these people will get the support they need. And I think a lot of people, they are just so exhausted and or they're not honestly ready for this type of work, right? Like it really requires a specific person who is ready to put in the work, ready to get to the root cause, ready to invest not just financially but energetically in their health. And it's a very different process than going to your doctor, getting a medication, coming back, being put on a different medication. Like it's it's not the easy button. And so
No.
it requires a specific type of person because as you can attest to, you and I worked together for 10 months and you were doing a lot of intensive protocols and it wasn't like it was hard all the time, but we found a lot of stuff that we were working on. And so you put in a lot of work to heal your body. And I was there to support you every step of the way.
Yeah. And transparently, while I was going through it, and I said this on the other podcast episode that we did, I was taking a lot of supplements and I was doing a lot of things for the healing journey. And it felt okay in the moment because I was noticing how I was feeling better. And I wouldn't change that for anything. But there was times I was like, man, I was doing some weird stuff. And you were just like, it just felt like there was so much going on. It's like, okay, in the morning I'm going to take this, and then like before you eat you have to like take this, and
Mhm.
then you'd be like constantly timing things. And then the times when I was drinking like the salt water is like you're traveling and then you're trying to like keep up this supplement regimen.
Yeah.
And I just like think back like when I was in the thick of it, and I just thought, wow, I was really doing doing a lot
Yeah,
of stuff.
you
But
were. You had a lot of stuff going on because, like, so I have to explain the salt water because people are going to hear this and be like, wait, why was she making Lisa drink salt water? So that's part of the iodine protocol. So to prep for iodine, you shouldn't just be dosing with iodine. And iodine is really important for estrogen detox, thyroid, skin, mood, like tons of things. And your iodine was low, most people's are. So to prep for iodine, we have to do something called salt loading, which is where you essentially drink salt water once a day to dust off the cells of other competing halogens. So like fluoride, bromine, chloride, so that the iodine can get into the cell. So you do that for once a day for 2 weeks. So that wasn't a forever thing. And yes, like that's a weird thing when I'm like, when I first learned about that, I was like, okay, that sounds really weird. And I went through that myself. But yeah, there's like a method to madness. But yeah, you did that. And the copper protocol is more intense protocol, like more supplement heavy because we're literally detoxing copper from the body. And that takes about 3 months for before we retest. So yeah, depending on what we find in the labs there and and you were someone who I knew like we had converse I was like, how is this feeling? Like, do you feel like this is too much? Like you were someone who could handle a lot
mm,
and you were very motivated and you were seeing like quicker progress because you could. And then there are other people who it's like we go slower and we very much tailor it. So that's, I think important too.
yeah. And I'm a checkoff person, so there was a long time that I carried this Excel spreadsheet checkoff list with me because I was like, did I do this? Did I already do this? And then the weekends were different because it was different than like the work week. And I think, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, it's 5 o'clock and I totally forgot about this. But then, like, you get into a groove and you're just, taking your supplements and living your best life. And then before you know it, you're in maintenance and it feels like you're not hardly taking anything.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're not on those intensive protocols anymore.
No.
You're on a maintenance. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, very, yeah. And actually, I was going to tell you, so I just finished, I was on that. The last thing that I had to take for like the protocol was that bile supplement. And I finally just finished that
Okay.
yesterday. So I was
Yep.
like, I'm
That lasted you a
officially,
while. Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
officially in
Yeah.
maintenance now. So it's like, very minimal supplements, seems very easy to do. But like, I do remember like that very first day taking the supplements because before I just I took birth control and I took an allergy pill and my melatonin. But then you go from like hardly taking anything and then you're taking all these supplements that I thought this feels very overwhelming.
Hmm.
But then, like I said, I was seeing results, I was feeling better. So I just kind of leaned into the uncomfortable.
Hmm. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And we talked about that again too of like, how is this feeling? Is this too much? And you were like, nope, it's good. I'm seeing results. Like, let's keep going. And so, yeah, it's variable depending on each person. So, but there's always a method to the madness versus I've had a lot of clients who come in and they're taking a lot of supplements, but they're all random and not based on labs and they're not helping. So
Yeah.
that is something that's, I'm very nutrition focused and there is a need for supplements depending on the person and what they're doing, but everything is backed by data. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And
yeah.
there was, talking about going back to the lows right before I transitioned to the new job, like finishing the other job, I just felt like a lot of stress with that transition. And one of the symptoms that I'd had before we started working together was like heartburn or indigestion.
Yeah.
And I always thought it was because I had too much stomach acid, but I didn't have enough. And so I would take like Tums on a pretty regular basis. And so then there was this long time where I never took anything because I was not having heartburn issues anymore. And then when I got that stress, like I started, like there was a couple of days over a couple week period where I was taking Tums again because I was starting to get that. And I had this thought like, oh my gosh, what if I'm not healed? And then I was like, whoa, 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 settle down here. It's not that you're not healed. You're just going through a stressful time. So like, let's look at like what
Mhm.
we can do to, calm yourself down, like ease your stress load, and like let's just try and get through this period and not be, more hard or more critical on yourself because that's not going to be helpful.
Mhm.
And then, once I got through that transition period, now I'm thinking about it, I'm like, I can't remember when I took a Tums.
Yeah. Yeah. You can also try bitters too, if that can help with
I
the
do,
stomach
yeah,
acid.
I'm still doing the
Still doing
bitters.
those. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yes, and that can be a very common thing, like where you have like symptom PTSD and you're like, oh no, it's backsliding. And so just check yourself. And that's where, having ongoing support can be helpful for someone who knows you and, or just, again, you and I worked together for quite a long time. So we did have those conversations. So now you
Hmm.
have those skills, you're like, okay, like let's take a step back. Like I'm not regressed or at square one. Like I'm transitioning jobs and there's stress that comes with that. And like that's what's happening. So like you did a good job of like coaching yourself through it and also recognizing like this is the root, like what's the root cause? It's the stress, right?
Yeah, yeah. And then
Hmm.
I remember having, because I never really had any issues with acne. I mean, like I'll get an occasional small breakout around my cycle, but then I remember, during like the heavy part of the protocol, I would have like these random breakouts, and sometimes they were really bad. And I think I would like message you, and I would freak out. I'm like sending pictures of my zits, and I'm like,
Hmm.
tell me what's wrong, and just because my skin normally wasn't like that. So I would have many freakouts about that, and you're like, I think it's just like your body's purging. And then I had this period where like I never even have zits or anything on my forehead really. And it was like my whole forehead was bumpy. And I think whatever I was doing at that time, it was just like purging, and my forehead never really broke out. Like it just was weird because it was there. And then a week or two later, like my forehead was smooth again. But I
Hmm.
would just have these like little mini freakouts, like what's going on?
Yeah.
And then something else I was thinking of too, because we were talking like with we did a liver protocol for the gentle liver support, and it had me take a look at a lot of the products I was using like around my house. So I would say that's something that's transitioned in my life too, is looking at things and trying to use like household cleaners, makeup, cleaning products, shampoos, body washes that are, tested. And like I use the EWG app
Hmm.
and
So smart.
detergents, things like that. Just, yeah, just to find things that are, I don't want to say like safer or better, but there's less, they do
Less of a
less.
toxic burden on your body.
Yes. Yeah.
Hmm.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Yeah. 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 And going back to those freak out moments, like this is really helpful for people to hear because I always want to be like transparent with people that this is the healing journey is not all sunshine and rainbows. Like, I mean, there are a lot, like, that's why we're going through, like, there's many highs and there are also lows. And I, again, I want the right person who, is ready to see long term results. It's not for a lot of people, it's not like just a, bait and switch of I do this and things are automatically better. It's like there are seasons of doubt. There are seasons of like, this is hard or life gets in the way. Like, and that's where having a coach in your back corner can be really helpful. So I wonder if you can just kind of chat a little bit about like how having me as support was helpful in those times versus like doing it on your own or going down like a chat GPT rabbit hole. Like we've all been there, like Google rabbit holes, like Facebook groups, like those types of things. Like, can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah. I think it was amazing, actually. We would check in. I think we were doing every other week initially, and then we went to like every 3 weeks, and then we were on a once a month rotation, like towards the end. But it was nice because I had chat access to you, so I could message you, if I had a quick question, or if I had questions about like how to take something, or really just questions about anything. And instead of like just spiraling about it, I could message you. You would respond back. You're always very like good at responding back. And if you were like going to be away, you were great at like preemptively reaching out, like, this is when I'm not going to be available. Like, this is the last time. Like, so you could take time for yourself. So it wasn't like I ever just felt like I was, floating, flying without a parachute or anything like that. Like, I just always felt like you were my safety net. So, like I said, so I wouldn't spiral, and I could just reach out with any question that I had, and you were always there too. Sometimes I just needed my feelings validated, like you validating how I was feeling was just kind of like, okay, that was what I needed.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that because I feel like that is one strength of, choosing this route versus the conventional route or even working with a functional MD. I had someone who reached out to me today and she was like, she and I had chatted about working together and she decided to work with a functional doctor that her OBGYN recommended, which is totally fine. And she told me, she was like, so we just ran a GI map and they found a lot of bacteria. And I will say, like, financially, that's what I needed to do. And I, did not click with that person as well. Oh, my light went out. Did not click with
Mhm.
that person. And they put her on a very strict elimination diet to help her acne and basically told her she needs to stay on that the rest of her life. And so, it's just a matter of like what route you want to go. If you want to go that route, that's totally fine. If you want to go a different route, then that's when working with someone who takes a different approach that's more personalized and more individualized is helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. And, talking about food and supplements and elimination, like, you were always very like, here's a list of foods that you can eat that are going to help with this. So it's not like you were just like, oh, well, let's just take like this supplement, like you could have said, like, take this, but you were like, why don't you try eat Brazil nuts so you can get your selenium, eat like different foods with potassium in them. So you weren't just, that was the thing that I liked too. So it made food fun and interesting. So you were just kind of like, how can I get more of this? And learning things about food that I didn't know before, where, food is not just nourishment. I mean, it can do so much more for you.
100%. Well, is there anything else that you think is important to like share or that you want to let other people who are listening know before we end with our final fun question?
Um, I think, like I'm very passionate about, I think women should feel better. I think if women feel better, the world would be a better place. If you think something's not right or you've talked to your doctor, and you still feel like something inside of you, or you've tried things, or you've gone down like a chat GPT rabbit hole, it's just so much easier and so much less feeling like you're spinning your wheels to work with Taylor. And, I told you this many of times, but you were great to work with. You were so easy to work with. If finances were an issue for somebody, that, they were an issue for me because transparently, I could not afford to just be like, here you go, here's all of it at one lump sum. You were great at working with me for what was doable for my finances. And that helped a lot. So I think like just overall big picture, you make it so easy to do the work. If somebody's ready to do the work, like, you're the whole package.
Oh, thank you. Even if I make you drink salt water for 2 weeks.
Even if you make me drink salt water for 2 weeks, yeah. But you were like, but you were like, well, I had to do it too. So I thought, well, Taylor's done this also, I can do it too. So it wasn't like you were just like, try it, and like hopefully it'll be I don't know how it'll be, but like I'm sure it'll be fine. So it's like
Yeah.
you had done it before too. So
Yeah, I've done all the things on myself too. So like before I ever implement it with a client, I always tested on myself first. I'm always the first guinea pig. So I do all the
yeah,
weird things too. And not everything's weird, but like we said, we
yeah,
found a lot of stuff in Lisa's lab. So we did some more intensive protocols. Not everyone has to do that, but yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, to wrap up, I always ask, as you know, my guests, how they are nourishing themselves lately. So how are you nourishing yourself?
I think a variety of ways. Just taking it easy on myself when I'm in that luteal phase, leaning into like, how can I support myself better if I feel stressed? Trying not to, have these like shoulds or you have tos on myself, and really just, like embracing how life feels now and just enjoying it, and feeling more relaxed overall. And I would say I really do like my meditations too. It's a good way to either start your day or end your day, or start and end your day. Because sometimes I
Yeah.
do them in the morning and sometimes I do them in the evening. And I don't know, I just, ever since we worked together, I just feel so much lighter. I feel like, I've lost 1,000 pounds.
Mhm. Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much for taking the time to come back on the show and share
Yes.
how your life has changed and just candidly the path of healing, right? Like the ups and the downs, the beautiful pieces, the ugly pieces, like that's important for people to hear who are considering this journey. So I so appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's high highs, there's low lows, there's like some, some times where you're just like feeling like nothing's really happening, you're
Coasting.
just cruising
Hmm.
along. But I would say, if you had to look at the whole thing overall, like I would say, you're up on top of the mountain, like with your flag and like your mineral mocktail celebrating.
Yes. Yeah. And within a year, like it's pretty crazy how your life has, I mean, because you've kept me posted on everything. It's pretty crazy how your life has changed so much in 1 year.
Yeah. And, people would say, like, if you would have said when I first started working with you, you're going to be on this journey for a year or more, I would have thought, no way, that
A
seems
long
like a long
time.
time. But it went by so fast. I mean, and here it's been almost a year now since I stopped birth control, and it feels like it's only been 5 minutes ago. So the time really just does. I said this before, but the time really does fly by. And, like the time's going to pass anyway. You might as well do something that you make yourself feel better. So,
Yeah, that's a good note to end on for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, if this episode resonated with you, feel free to share it with a friend, a coworker, any woman in your life who needs to hear this. Let's spread the word that you do not have to feel awful all the time, and also bring more awareness to how birth control could be impacting your body and other ways to heal your hormones and feel better naturally. Until next time, everybody, stay nourished.